Hey, what's up, everybody? Josh Bennett here with Money Masters. In this video, we're going to talk to you about what is required to start an LLC or limited liability company. So, get this question a lot in terms of what the overall process and what you need to know about starting an LLC. So, I thought I would, take the time, dive in, and show you exact step by step of what is required to set up an LLC. Granted, this is going to vary a little bit from state to state, but most of all the processes should be pretty similar. So this should at least give you a high level overview. So first step of overall process is naming your LLC. So, and also making sure the name is not already taken. So you can't necessarily take somebody else's name, and you really don't want it to be too similar to another company, just because that's how you could potentially get into a lawsuit. So, for example, um, you know, if you have the company, there's obviously Apple computers. If you wanted to name your workout company Apple, yeah, I mean that's probably different enough where people aren't going to necessarily interpret it as a similar company. Whereas if you named your company Apple Electronics, yeah, you might get sued by Apple and probably don't want that. So make sure it's different enough than names that are already established out there. And one easy way to do it is to go to your state Secretary of State website. And there's going to be a place where you can do a business search and enter the name that you're thinking about to see if there's a name already out there. So, for example, I have the LLC Aimright Media. So you can see, obviously, already taken. So if you are wanting to look up ABC LLC. You can see there's a bunch of different companies out here that are named ABC LLC. So you can see if yours is close enough, depending on how you're ultimately going to do it, depending on what state is and things like that. So at least dive through and just see if, you're going to get yourself in that hot water. But let's assume that your name's not taken. Then the next step is to actually file for your LLC. So, for example, this is where it's going to differ a little bit by state by state. Some will require a form, some will be able to do it electronically. So California has recently established to do electronically. But once you have the name, you'll want to go to the articles of organization or articles of formation. Every state's a little bit different, but you'll just kind of Google "start my LLC" in California or Wyoming or whatever state you are, and then it's going to be on the Secretary of State website somewhere. So, for example, if with this articles of organization here in California, we click the form and it's going to take us to file online fast. So then we would just file to set up that LLC, which is usually a pretty simple form that just basically says things like, obviously there's going to be a fee there, but so I was going to hopefully try to show you the actual form, but anyways, so basically you just need to fill out who's your registered agent, what's the address. So the registered agent's going to be kind of who's the person in charge of representing to your LLC to the state of California for compliance documents, things like that. So as you file, you'll just want to make sure you understand what else is required with the application. So, for example, California has a minimum tax that's due of $800 each year. So you just want to make sure you know the timeframes that you need to submit that by. They also have different requirements for how often you need to provide, updated addresses and things like that. And you have kind of recurring fees each year. So you just want to make sure you know when those are due and just any of the requirements there. And also, depending on the industry, you may want to know what other kind of required legal things are, whether it's a specific license, any other required insurance or bonds or anything like that. You want to make sure you have all that put together as you're starting your, filing for your LLC. Where each business and stuff is going to differ a little bit, so you want to know exactly what the requirements are for yours. So, for example, as I have a wealth management company. As I filed in California to start my wealth management company, I opened the LLC, but that's not where it ends because I have to, apply with the regulatory body, which is called FINRA, to be able to actually practice my business in the state of California. So I had to get registered with FINRA before I could actually really open for business. So that's kind of what you want to know is what are the requirements for your industry, along with that LLC, and make sure you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. So let's assume that you've done that. So then you also want to make sure you open or get an operating agreement, which you can do this on like a website like LegalZoom. Depending on the complexity of your business, you may actually want to go through an attorney as well. So LegalZoom is a cheap, easy way to get them, especially if you're a solo LLC owner. Then you probably don't need anything too complex. But as soon as you start getting partners in there, it could vary, because then you may have things like buy-sell agreements where if one of you partners passes away or gets divorced or something like that, what happens from there. So there's going to be different situations that you want to make sure you cover. A lot of times going through an attorney is going to be provide you with a much more bulletproof operating agreement. If it's just you as a solo owner, you probably don't need anything drastic, but it could be worth at least setting up an operating agreement just to have kind of those regulatory things or regulation things or compliance things just buttoned up. Not every state will require an operating agreement. Some states will require it, but it's just a good best practice anyways. So either you can do it through like a LegalZoom or directly through like an attorney, depending on which route you want to go. LegalZoom is going to be the cheaper way. Obviously, going through an attorney is probably going to be the more compliant way and kind of ultimately the better way. But you're going to have to pay a little bit more. So it just kind of depends on which you prefer. So once you have the operating agreement set up, you also need to get a EIN number, this is your social security number for your business. So just your tax ID number. So you can apply directly on the IRS website. So you'll just want to find what type of business you're setting up, which is LLC, and then you just submit the application to get that EIN number. And then ultimately they'll send you that EIN number, usually within a couple of business days if you file online. So once you have that EIN number, now you'll be able to file taxes for the LLC, which is obviously an important step. And then you also can start opening bank accounts and things like that too, which is an important thing. So, you'll want to open a bank account for the business, and there's a bunch of different new trendy online banks, such as like Aslo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But, this is a free business checking account. So you can get this started for free. If you want a more established bank, you do like Chase. They have online banks as well, and they also have like in-person branches. So depending on what type of business and how, if you want it to be fully online or have an in-person branch as well, that's kind of up to you. But this is an easy way to get these different bank accounts set up, because ultimately, if you don't have a bank account set up, it's hard for you to accept money and or pay people. And the key with the LLC is, so an LLC provides you limited liability, but it only provides you limited liability if you basically protect what's called the corporate veil. So an LLC technically is a separate entity, and so you want to make sure you treat it as a separate entity. So by having the business bank account, that allows you to not cross wires where you're paying expenses out of your personal account or anything like that. You want to keep all business expenses and all business income separate and really treat it as a business. Otherwise, you could get in a position where, if someone sues you, there's going to be blurred lines between what's the business, what's your personal assets, and they could actually come after your personal assets. So it's just something to keep in mind. And that's kind of where the operating agreement and having all these things really buttoned up is really important. Otherwise, you could lose the whole benefits of having an LLC to begin with. So, definitely make sure you're reaching out with an attorney or just kind of understanding what your legal implications are of all this stuff and making sure you're really treating it as a separate entity. And that's why having that business bank account can be really important. But also having a business credit card too, I think is really important. So having a business credit card, one, if you're doing a lot of online purchases, this just basically gives you an extra level of fraud protection and identity theft protection. But again, you don't want to be charging things on your personal credit card. So having a separate business credit card is going to be really valuable. And there's lots of different ways to find business credit cards at creditcards.com. A couple different routes you can go with it is, setting up like a zero APY. So a credit card, like there's a lot of times that they'll have 15-month or 18-month or 1 year of zero interest. So especially as you're starting your business, that could be a really cool way to get essentially some startup funding and some wiggle room is to be able to charge without getting interest charged against you for the first year while you're getting started up. But there's a lot of ones on here too, like for example, $100,000, 100,000 points. So, look for a credit card that's going to benefit, kind of what you're trying to aim to do. And every credit card is going to be a little different in terms of what sort of benefits they offer and how much they're willing to give you as a new business owner. So lastly, you want to make sure you have a way to track your incoming and outgoing expenses. I personally recommend QuickBooks for any of your financial statement analysis and things like that, or just basically taking care of your financials for the business. Depending on how involved your business is going to be, there's all the way from simple start, which is just essentially very basics, up to like advanced, like QuickBooks Online, which is going to be pretty much anything you possibly want to do with your financials, you'll be able to do. So make sure you kind of look into a way to have your financials tracked as well. I mean, there's a lot of other softwares out there similar to QuickBooks, like Xero, Xero, FreshBooks. Any of those will do. I personally, kind of the gold standard is QuickBooks though. So those are the basic steps. But again, just make sure you understand what other, what state specific regulations you have around opening an LLC. But those are some of the basic requirements you're going to want for every single LLC is, operating agreement, tax identification number, actually, form the LLC, get your bank account opened, get your credit card, and make sure you're keeping all your finances and everything separate from you as a person, because that's going to help protect you down the line. So hope you found this video valuable. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so that way you get more valuable information for boosting your overall finances. So yeah, again, till next time, cheers.